Good evening, Detroit Lakes. This is the Vikings Territory Breakdown. I am your host, Joe Johnson, owner of VikingsTerritory.com, PurplePTSD.com, and MiniIce.com, our brand new Minnesota Wild website. It has been quite the week that feels like a month in Vikings land. Lots to talk about and break down this week. Thankfully, I'm here with Mr. Joe Oberly, my mentor, the silver lining to my depressing cloud. How you doing, man? We haven't really talked much since the game, so I'm interested to
No,
get your take on the goings on.
I'm doing well. The Vikings are going out with 2020, so I guess that's kind of apropos that a couple bad years there to get. So yeah, but myself.
We are also joined by former Minnesota Vikings head coach extraordinaire, Mr. Mike Tice. How you doing, man? How's the West Coast treating you?
West Coast is a little rainy today, boys. It's not a day to be out and about. So I'm glad we're doing this show, and glad I'm locked down in my studio. And I'm sure Diane will have some things for me to do around the house when we get done with this.
Just tell her the show went long, 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah, right.
That's usually what
right.
I do.
Right.
Let's hop right into it. I mean, I've said this on every show we've done, but one of the great things about having you on the show with us each week, Coach, is the fact that we get some perspective that even I think the most ingratiated sports writer, which I am not that person, doesn't have that point of view of an ex-player, a coach who's coached multiple different levels on a team. And one of the takeaways that I had from the Saints game is something that I think has followed Zimmer around a lot in his time here in regards to some of the things that he says about either players individually or the team to the media, which seem weird because he keeps things so close to the vest most of the time, but then he'll come out and say, like he did after this game, this is the worst defense I've ever coached. It's bad, essentially. And I was wondering, what your take was on and I'll clean it up for the good people in Detroit Lakes, but, some coaches have the mushroom theory of, feeding the media something and then keeping them in the dark. I mean, when you were head coach, I mean, what was your philosophy in regards to communicating things that may have been true, but may have also been like a harsh truth that would irritate a player with the media?
Well, I think, Bill Parcells was an expert at it. I certainly don't fashion myself as an expert at anything as far as coaching is concerned. But I will say that, he did a nice job of calling players out without naming players. And, I really didn't read. I saw the headlines about what Coach said, what Mike said about the defense. And I'm sure that comes from his pride in his defense, his pride, and that's, his forte. He got the head job because he's a defensive guru. And then to not have a stellar year numbers-wise and holding teams down, winning games with his defense, I'm sure there's some frustration there. And I'm going to guess some of that frustration came out after that really, really ugly loss to the Saints.
Well, you had a great relationship, I thought, with the media when you were here, Mike. I always looked forward to listening to your press conferences because, as a sports person, a sports writer, we're always looking for something, something new, something different, something not the same old, and you just had a really good relationship, I thought, and you came out with some of that. How did you cultivate that? I mean, that because some off it. How did that work for you?
Well, I tried, Joe. I tried to be fair and be honest and open with the sports writers, and they have they have to put a story out, and they need information. And if I felt like if I was honest and fair with them, then they would be honest and fair with our team and with me. And for the most part, they were. I thought the Minnesota press handled everything really well when I was the head coach.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it, because you can really read in some of the articles, especially guys that have more credentialed access, which means they have a conference call number they can call in this season, that there in this market or other leagues where sometimes animosity builds up between writers and coaching regimes, and that comes through in the media. And there's players, especially they're coached, I don't know how extensive their media training really is on the team itself, but that's part of their contract. They have to interact with the media, they have to promote the team that way, so on and so forth. And the more stories out there, the more interested people are in the game. But yeah, that's a really good question. How for I would assume for rookies it's a little more extensive, but how extensive is media training for players or even maybe new hires for coaches?
Well, I think the NFL now has developed a program for players coming into the league. Now, I want to say not necessarily for like free agents like myself that came in the league for a tryout and a cup of coffee. For the higher ranked picks and the guys that are going in the draft, there are programs that the NFL has to, talk to the players about how to handle them, how to handle the media, how to handle an interview. What types of things are good answers, how much information is too much. And then always, I'm sure they're always talking, I haven't sat in on any of these in years, but talking about, being positive and saying good things about your teammates.
Yeah, that's something that, again, I think that it's a little strange to me, and I haven't been the biggest Zimmer defender, really. I try to be as objective as possible, but I'm also incredibly emotional about football, so that's just a weird combination of personality traits. Probably drive me crazy or crazier at some point. But it's just astounding to me. I mean, after that game, yes, it was a bad game. It was historically bad. It was, the most yards since, 5 decades ago, so on and so forth. But it's really hard to say things declaratively, like I'm seeing in the media this week about, who should, big sites, really respected sites, headlines like who should we fire? Who's up next to get, the chopping block? And one thing that I always remember when I hooked up with Joe back in 2016, and he started teaching me things that I didn't learn because I didn't go to school for anything related to this or anything, I guess, related to the real world, was to not call for people's jobs just willy-nilly, because these are real guys with real families and real lives. And I think it's hard to really say that this season is on Zimmer in any stretch of the imagination. I mean, everyone knows how many players they lost to free agency. Everybody knows the youth and inexperience on this defense, and you've had these just tremendous injuries to almost every core player left. I've just been a little surprised at some of these more established, sites out there basically calling for everyone to get fired in a season. They've done pretty well considering the circumstances. I mean, wouldn't you say, Coach, that this has been one of the most insane seasons that, just in general, COVID, injuries, so on and so forth?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just look as far back as just last week, the Browns going into the game with, all of their receivers because of contact tracing at a rehab tub or whatever. All of their receivers were out, and here they got a big game. They haven't clinched a playoff spot yet, unless I'm screwing that up, but I don't think they have. And so now they're out there trying to, get their butts into the playoffs, and they don't have some players. And you look at that Denver game earlier in the season, they're playing a wide receiver practice squad too, I think, at quarterback. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of chaotic, and it's kind of crazy, but that's 2020 in the world right now.
Yeah, it's been a weird year, and I do want to again remind people of your show, Odds and Ends with Mike Tice. People should definitely check that out. It's you can find it on YouTube. I think it's on Apple and Spotify podcasts as well. The video show is the bread and butter though, and you do a lot of really great picks. I don't know how you did this last weekend. I didn't keep that
Not
closely
so
an eye
good.
on it.
Not I didn't do so well. Let's talk about how I've done for the season.
There you
44
go.
wins, 34 losses, and one push
Ooh.
in a game a few weeks ago where the Chiefs covered by 3 and pushed. But yeah, not a great week last week. I was caught off guard by something. It really bothers me is our family fantasy football team. We're 10 of us. I was in the final game against my son-in-law's sister,
The
and
championship?
I got walloped. I
Oof.
lost. She had,
Wow.
yeah,
That's
I gotta have a
Did
good week.
you not a professional coach? I mean, with all your insight,
They just want the $100 entry fee, so it builds up the pot. They don't care. Last year I took like last, so it's like they're like, yeah, come on back. And then this year I got engaged and started to, pay more attention to them. Like my wife won the weekly last year, and she gets $150. This year we both won the weekly. She won one week, she got $150, and I won one week, got $150. So we got our entry fee back.
wow.
Now it's time to get some place money there, some winner place money.
I'll never forget. It sounds like a lot of people are winning that picked up Diggs and Josh Allen on the same team. I had Moss and Brady in 2007, went undefeated in the regular season, lost the first round because they played the Browns in a really windy, muddy game, and it was like a 9-3 win or something. I went undefeated the next season and also lost in the first round of that year. And so the only pleasure I get from fantasy at this point is hearing that Joe doesn't win because he seemed to win our league every year that we were in it, which
How many people you have in the league?
12.
Oh yeah, we have 10. We have my son-in-law's parents and sister and brother, and we have my son and his in-laws, and my wife Diane and I. And yeah, last year I took last, so I was more engaged. I was not engaged. I was playing guys. My daughter was picking up. I was playing guys that were hurt. And I wasn't very. I wasn't engaged. I'm a little more engaged this year, boys.
well, Joe, you'll be happy to know, Joe, that I was 12-1 in my league, and I said to somebody, if I don't win this, I'm making a mistake, and I get to the semifinals against my son. And Aaron Rodgers and, or I should say, Stephon Diggs and Devontae Adams scoreless championship. So that's just how fantasy.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. I think it makes the things it makes it's good for the league. I think it makes you interested in games you may not otherwise be. But man, does it drive me absolutely up the wall. I'm so bad at it. Speaking of Kamara though, what a insane performance. It felt like watching a game of like Madden or something where the guy only knew how to run the ball. It was historically just a huge game for him. He, if not for the when the crowd was booing on which would have been the sixth touchdown of 7 at that point. Um, he could have broken the record and had 7 touchdowns. I mean, what do you attribute that to? Is he that good? Is it the lack of a nose tackle, really, and the injuries at linebacker for the Vikings? Is it obviously he's a great player, but I mean, what do you see in Kamara, Coach?
Well, I had talked that I thought they would get him going a little bit more because he kind of disappeared for a couple of weeks, and sure enough, unfortunately, he gets going against the Vikings, and it was just one of those days where we were not in our gaps on run defense at times, and the tackling was poor throughout the game. I did not like the tackling. I did not like the way the guys were coming downhill and taking on the backs, and that's what you get when you don't sharpen your elbows up and tighten down your shoulder pads and your face mask and your chin strap. That's what you get, man. You get someone running for 6 touchdowns against you.
Yeah, it's something that have plagued this team all season. I wonder how differently things would have been if Michael Pierce would have been able to play. Again, that's just something that you said last week, Coach, that stood out to me as I was this close to getting into my doldrums of part of the problem is I pay a lot of attention to what fans say because I like to write articles and respond to fan narratives. Maybe it's just a lazy way to get content, but it seems to I always kind of am not congruent with what the narratives are in the hive mind that exists, which is actually why I started the sites in the first place because everyone ran me out of town in 2015. But you said, well, why don't we focus on some positive stuff about this team? I think there's, obviously that was a really rough game. But I do think that, and I mean, if people that are familiar with the show that Joe and I did for years, Morning Joe's, I mean, that is kind of the bent that I'm on. I'm 36. They have never seen the team in the Super Bowl. That's what I want more than anything. I get a little down sometimes, but I still feel like it isn't homerism or drinking purple Kool-Aid to look at this season and say, considering there's a lot to look forward to in 2021. I mean, this offense looks one or two offensive linemen or some depth at the line away from doing some really great things. I've been talking to some former Vikings offensive linemen about the performance of certain players on the line in recent days and weeks, and the narrative that I'm getting from them is it's crazy to blame Cousins for really anything at this point. The line hasn't necessarily played great. You've talked a lot about that, Coach. But I mean, would you agree that this where would you put this offense, this Vikings offense right now? Do you think they're on the borderline of becoming one of the best in the league, or do you think they're too conservative, just from a bird's eye view?
I don't know that I could rank them as one of the best in the league. They run the ball, they run the ball fine. But again, if you take away the run from the Vikings, they can't beat you throwing the ball. They can't beat you dropping back, throwing the ball. And it's very important in this league today and the way things are shaping up in the National Football League that you are able to throw the football. And they have not shown the ability to protect the quarterback when that running game looks a little off kilter, but also when they get behind and they have to throw the ball, they haven't been able to do it.
And that's even scarier prospect this week when first you have Dalvin Cook, who's not going to suit up because he had a family emergency he had to leave state for, and you've got Riley Reef, who's just been on a COVID IR. So what are they going to do on offense this week? Holy cow!
Yeah.
Well, the good news is they play the Lions, who have their own problems. So,
I headlines the other day saying that they might not even have a coach available for the game. It's like, what a crazy it seems very surreal. When it comes to the line, though, Coach, do you feel like that exactly what you said, which has been a consistent thing that we've talked about? You were on our show almost 2 years ago now, it feels like, and you said very similar things. Do you feel like that's more so a philosophy thing than a personnel thing? Like, that's not something maybe that they could draft one or two guys, like maybe a true left tackle, maybe a good left guard, and that might help in that regard? Or do you think it's because of their philosophy with the smaller, quote unquote, more athletic linemen?
Well, I think there's two parts to that. The type of O-linemen you need for the zone scheme are not big monsters. You don't need those big type players. And again, that turns into be a problem when you can't run the ball or you get behind. You have to pass protect. They've shown to have some problems on the inside of that line in pass protection and having that immediate pressure up the middle, right up on the either side of the center. And that's not advantageous for anybody trying to throw the football. But I think the Vikings have a great personnel department. They have great people in that building. They're going to sit down, do a better job than I could because I don't have all the access to the film and those things. And they're going to look at where their issues are, and they're going to address as many of those as they can. Remember, there's a couple of different ways to improve a team. You look at can the young guys get better, and how much better can they get? Will they go from backups to starters, from practice squad to active? So get your young players better. That's one. Draft. Draft some more young players. So bring in an influx of talent. That's another way you can get your team better. And then, get some guys healthy and get some guys back. That's another way to get yourself better as a football team. And then the last one is free agency. Go out and address, the top free agents in the areas where you feel light and where you can get that immediate impact from signing a really good free agent talent off the street when they become available in the free agency. So there's a number of different ways to get your team better. And the other ones we always talked about, and I learned this from Chuck Knox, is you talk to your staff about coaching better, and you look at, what could we have done better in this situation? What could we have called differently in this situation? So there's a number of ways to get your football team better, but the main thing is everybody's got to be on the same page and everybody's got to buy in.
Coach, when you look at what the Vikings did this past offseason with, they had a really good draft. A lot of rookies contributed to the team this season, and they didn't do so well in free agency. One of their prize free agents opted out and with COVID and such. Do you see then? They look like they're kind of committed to a rebuild to start developing more through the draft and build back up that way, because they got some expensive free agents that they might, or expensive veterans that they might have to let go. Do you see them more leaning towards a heavier draft and less in free agency with their team in the kind of shape it's in right now?
I couldn't answer that. I don't know where their numbers are good and where their numbers are bad with their cap. I don't know what contracts are a detriment to their balance sheet and which ones are good contracts. So that's something for the front office people and the owner and head coach to all figure out together. And I'm sure they're gonna sit down and buckle up their shoes and hike up their pants and get to work and roll up their sleeves and get to work.
Couch a little bit.
As soon as the season's over, they're going to get right back at it.
I was just going to say, is a mentality kind of that you take your swing in free agency, and if it doesn't get what you need, then you got to go in and try to make the moves in the draft. Is it always that way, or is it say, hey, maybe we don't need to? I guess I'm speaking just in general for any team. I mean, is that the mentality going? You got your things that you want to get, and if you get them, great, or if you don't, then you've got to really make up for it in the draft. Is that a realistic thought?
Well, I'm going to guess they'll come in with a plan, and the plan will be, all right, we're going to go after player A, B, C in free agency. If we don't get A, let's get B. If we don't get B, let's get C. If we don't get C, let's get D. And that's going to affect the draft. It always does. And then if neither A, B, or C signs, then they have to either go down the line and bring in a player from another position that might not have been an A, B, or C, but it might be a D, E, and F. And then that also affects what you're going to do in the draft, And, of course, there's trades. There's more trading going on in the league.
Yeah, trades seem to be happening more and more each season. They were so rare back in the day, up until really not that long ago. I've never really been, I don't know, it seems to me that coaches and GMs value draft picks more so than getting an established, known quantity. You'll get a guy like Mike Wallace, the receiver the Vikings picked up for a fifth-round pick, who was a 1,000-yard guy, a burner, not like an all-pro level guy, but he was very serviceable. And after he left the Vikings, he had the 1,100-yard season with Joe Flacco in Baltimore. It just seems to me that GMs and coaches value having more rolls of the die in regards to more draft picks than a lot of just knowing what you're getting. And typically, if a guy's good enough to be traded, he's probably pretty good. It just that's always been a head scratcher to me that they would rather have mid-round picks that might have a X percentage chance of developing into what you're giving away to or receiving. Am I wrong about that? I don't know. It's just always been a weird thought I've had.
I think it's a good thought, but we don't really know what's going on in these meetings, and we don't know what players they're fond of on the roster, what players they can't stand having in the building anymore, and that's all for them to figure out, and I'm sure they're going to do a great job. They have a great personnel department with the Vikings,
they really
and
do.
they'll get it right. They'll get it right. It's just frustrating. We all want to make the playoffs, and we all want to see what happens once you get in the playoffs because it's a whole new game, and not being able to get in there is frustrating, and it makes for a crappy offseason, quite frankly.
Well, one of the things that I think was the big cloud looming over the entire league in regards to free agency or any of that was the COVID cap situation and potentially, going from a projected 210 million a season, which is without the loss of ticket revenue would have been probably about what they would have gone from like 198, 199 to 210 back down to 175. Then we get the information this week that the league has approved the move to 17 games, which might help offset that loss in revenue. I don't know if that'll help this season, but I can't imagine being a guy like Brzezinski or Spielman, even going back to the Dalvin Cook contract extension and saying, well, we don't even know what the cap's going to be in the next couple of years. But ignoring that aspect of it, I don't necessarily – I haven't read a ton about it, but I know that some players – don't really want to play more regular season games, even if it means less preseason games. Those preseason games, as we learned this year, are important. Mainly, I think, not just from scouting some of your younger guys and giving them tryouts, but getting guys in game shape and making sure that they, aren't prone to injury when the season starts. What are your thoughts on the expansion to 17 games, the maybe the odd number of games that they're going to have, meaning some teams will have more home games than away games, or just as a coach and former player, coach, what do you think about that news?
Well, I do think there needs to be some preseason. However many games there needs to be there, you can't do it without some type of preseason, in my opinion. And adding the games, that was inevitable. We knew that was going to happen. So that's something that's been out there for a while. And with this COVID and with the players union and the NFL, kind of getting along right now, you knew that they were going to make that. They were going to make that push. I just reading that the Browns closed down their facility because of COVID. So it's crazy. It's crazy stuff out there. Well, here we go. Last week, man.
Oh, yeah. What are you thinking? Do you have a game that you're particularly interested in seeing? We've talked a lot these last couple weeks, about your picks, more so from the NFC perspective. I have a feeling I know who your favorite team is. In the AFC, you had the head coach of said team on your show, Odds and Ends with Mike Tice, a couple weeks ago or a couple weeks after he won his first Super Bowl. Is that an easy prediction for me to make on your predictions? Are you rolling with the Chiefs?
I like the Chiefs, but I'm a really big fan of the Bills. I really like the quarterback there. I don't think the Bills' defense is as good as it's been the last couple of years, but it's certainly better than some of the playoff teams' defenses. Of course, people think I should be rooting for the Seahawks because I played for the Seahawks. I like the Packers. I think Aaron Rodgers is playing great ball. They kind of shocked me last week. I did not really think that they were going to hold up in the run game against the Titans, but that game got out of hand early. Buccaneers are making a little push right now. We'll see what happens. The Saints have got a really good football team. It's going to be interesting. I think somebody gets hot and you don't know what's going to happen, but I think it's going to get interesting, and we'll see. Because there's teams out there that could get hot. The Browns could get hot. The Titans could get hot. The Dolphins have a solid team. I didn't read who they're going to start at quarterback this
Yeah,
week, but they certainly should not go back to the rookie, in my opinion.
agreed.
Almost cost them a playoff thing. And Washington has a great defense, but they have no offense. The Rams have been disappointing, and the quarterback has surgery on the thumb. The Bears are making a little push, which has surprised me because they're running the football. And so it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see who gets in this last week. Who gets in this last week? I was pulling up the Titans right there, as you heard, because I'm a big fan of the teams where I know coaches on the staff, and of
Okay.
course Todd Downing out of University of Minnesota and Eden Prairie High School, who used to work for me, is on that staff. He coaches
That's right.
Titans. And so I'm really pulling for the Titans. I was a little surprised they didn't perform better against the Packers, but Aaron Rodgers is having an MVP type season.
Yeah, he really is. It's a little frustrating as a Vikings fan. Since I've been cognizant of football, they've had two quarterbacks and they've both been astounding, and it's just been one of those things where uh, it irritates you, but you have to also you have to give credit where credit's due. I wasn't sure how good the Saints were. I thought Breeze looked like he, even before his injury, had kind of lost a lot of what made him so good, the velocity on the ball, which is important for him because he's not the tallest guy either, and he's got those windows that he likes to throw into more so than other quarterbacks, which we disrupted in the playoffs last year. I mean the Vikings. I'm really actually genuinely excited for the playoffs because I feel like there's more parity this year than usual, and that's saying something in a league that's built on parity. I think that's why the NFL is the most popular sport because you don't know what to expect each year. Fans can get excited unless they're fans of the Browns up until this year, because everyone's got a chance. But there's going to be some I feel like some instant classic playoff games coming into the next couple weeks. People should definitely keep an eye on odds and ends with Mike Tice. Each Saturday, you come out. I have a feeling you'll adjust your schedule for the playoffs for that show, Coach.
Yeah, I probably won't pick all the playoff games, but we'll see. I'm definitely going to pick a couple of them. I'm gonna be on the road for the championship weekend, so I might be doing a road show. But yeah, I'm interested to see how this weekend plays out. I mean, there's a lot of teams that can get in, and a lot of teams that are going to end up outside looking in. I mean, you look at the Colts. I mean, the Colts are not in. And I thought the
Wow.
Colts were going to beat Pittsburgh, as I think a lot of people did, and that did not happen. So now it's Colts have got to have some things happen before they get in. I mean, they have to, of course, win, but they need also Baltimore to lose too, and they need Tennessee to lose, and it's crazy. It's crazy. So I remember those days. I remember trying to get in, and you took care of your job and you won, and then something else had to happen, and sometimes that did happen, and sometimes it didn't happen.
For a number of games, this is going to be an exciting weekend.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. Yeah. Yeah. So
It's good for the NFL, and I actually breaking news. I checked my calculator, and the Vikings still have a chance to make them. I'm kidding.
oh
Oh
Um,
my.
wouldn't that be great though? Yeah. Again, everyone. Honestly, the best way I can put it is we actually, and I'll talk about this with Joe a little later in the show, but we hired Tim McNiff from Care 11, formerly of Care 11, to helm our video department moving forward because we really want to get into video stuff. And I say this, and I'm not just saying this because you're on this show. Uh, People really should check out Odds and Ends with Mike Tice. Subscribe to that show. You, it's a really, really good show. It's criminally underrated. I had a guy on my daily show, my video show, about a year and a half ago. They actually made a movie about him with Matthew McConaughey and Al Pacino, and he kept saying during the show, "I've been in the last 25 years, I'm 24-0-1 picking the Super Bowl." And I was
well,
like, "That's astounding." And it was a live show, and increasingly I was getting more and more emails from random people saying that's not true. Not even close to true. And so I've learned some guys that pick games, and you don't do it really from a betting perspective, just because you like to do it, inflate their numbers a little bit. But as we've said, you have a kind of a crystal ball sometimes when it comes to picking. The insight you have, all of it. It's a really good show, and it's 15 to 20 minutes, so it's not a huge commitment like my shows, which is me breathing once or twice and then talking the whole time. So as always, we appreciate you coming on the show. If people just
Hey, my
Google odds
pleasure,
and ends,
guys.
you'll
Yeah.
find it, or you'll find it on Vikings Territory or Purple PTSD.
Thanks, Coach.
Well, we'll holler at you down the road, all right? Let me know what we're doing during the playoffs, and
You bet.
might have to do a road show. We'll see.
Ooh,
All right,
That'd be
boys.
great.
Be
Thank
great,
you.
man. All right, stay warm. Be good.
I'm trying. It's a little chilly out there. I actually fell getting out of my car onto a landscaping rock. So yesterday I was at the doctor for a really longer than I wanted to be considering of COVID, and I broke 2 of my ribs. So it says
Well, come on. Drew Brees can play with 11 broken ribs. What are you complaining about?
I don't even think there are 11 ribs. He's a liar. No, I'm kidding. I know. I keep thinking of that. Like, wow, how could he do that? I can't even lift my arm to change the channel with the remote. It's I'm wayfish, I think is the conclusion to every show that we have. But I wanted to just really quickly announce that we are going to be working with Mr. Tim McNiff. I'm sure people are familiar with him. He was the sportscaster for Care 11, the number 1 guy in the market for a really long time. And he and I connected, and he was doing some sort of new media stuff with Care before he left there this year. And he's got a lot of great insight, and he's really, really motivated and really wants to help us accomplish our goal, which is to really change how people access their favorite Minnesota sports teams. The elevator pitch I give people, we're coming out with an app in February. Hopefully it'll be done, called UFTA. And it's essentially going to aggregate all sorts of local Minnesota sports news, podcast, YouTube shows, other Vikings related NFL stuff like Coach Tice's show, and also have a ton of social media features, and videos obviously going to be a huge part of that. And so we're very excited to have a guy like Tim McNiff run that aspect of it. He's already pitched a couple really great ideas. Basically, every morning you can sign up and get an email and get a 30-second clip. Here's the top three Minnesota sports things you need to know for the water cooler at work, stuff like that. We're really looking to change things, and we're really excited to be where we are. We want to obviously thank everybody for the support that we've had. 2020, despite being a really awful year otherwise, has been great for us. So take that, society. No, I'm kidding. It's been...
great. That's great news. When I saw that he was coming in, I had to go, Tim McNiff, that Tim McNiff, because I grew up watching him. So
yeah,
that's
very
pretty
surreal.
exciting.
But enough about us. Let's get into a couple more things. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just over encumbered by just the craziness of this year for the Vikings. I don't know where some of these positive thoughts are coming from. Usually, you know me, Joe, I'd be really just over it, and sardonic, or more so than usual. But even watching that, I mean, I really do feel like they're this close on offense to really having something. I really hope that, for multiple reasons, that they open up the passing game a little bit more, maybe having a good left guard like Wyatt Davis from Ohio State might help, because it feels like they're position by position. I mean, look at what Tyler Conklin's been doing. Why haven't they been using him more? They have so much talent on that offense. I guess that's right, they didn't. That it's hard not to get encouraged for next season if you think about Anthony Barr coming back, Kendricks, Michael Pierce. They'll probably pick up another edge rusher, even though DJ Wanham's looking good. Daniil Hunter obviously will be back. these.
Have you been drinking too much eggnog? What's going on?
I don't know, and we get the gas station, the Holly Nog with no alcohol, but I like it. It's probably a little sour at this point.
Just the sugar plums in your head are making you
I
dance with
know
excitement.
what's happening to me. I don't like it.
Yeah, it should be a very interesting off season. I mean, with so much coming, and that let's face it, there is some relief that comes with knowing that the Vikings are not in it. So then draft nicks like yourself can start looking ahead,
Yeah.
and
The pretendies.
Yes, I did read in the Star Tribune about Mike about Wyatt Davis this morning. I think he played right guard for Ohio State this year, but he, I'm sure they can figure out something with him in Cleveland. That would be nice to throw him in at right guard, maybe move Cleveland to left guard or left tackle if he still can play that, and Riley Reef goes down the road, even though he had a great season. So that's a big question mark there. There's going to be some changes. The offense is not far away from where they need to be. They need to solidify the offensive line. You've been harping for guards all season, and I agree with you. They got to bolster that for the running game and for pass protection. And then they need to get a couple interior defensive linemen that they need that it can count on. I mean, we want to see what Michael Pierce has left, and if he's going to be in any kind of shape to play after sitting out a year. They're a little bit, they're high on Wanham, or so they say, on the left end. And that's good. I think he's got to get better. And hopefully Danielle Hunter comes in back healthy than that. I think.
And happy though.
Yes, and happy. And then you draft a 3 tech, and I think you're good to go there. Hopefully get the 2 middle line or the 2 linebackers back, and their contracts are certainly a concern. Yep. But I'm happier than on defense how they looked at corner than I was at the beginning of the season, so that's a good thing. And we might be saying goodbye to Anthony Harris because there's always been contract issues with him. I think they put a
franchise.
Thank you. They franchised him for this season, so that's going to be coming up. And
he's they've asked him to do more, so I shouldn't really. I mean, a lot of people are saying he's had a down season, but him and Harrison Smith have been asked to do a tremendous amount more than they had previously. It's more of an interception thing. I think people are pointing to because he was a ball hawk last year.
It was, and so and Harrison Smith is not a spring chicken anymore either. So, it was nice to see last week. There was so few bright spots in that disgusting game we saw. Was Harrison Hand had a nice game, made some plays. So maybe that's something that's a possibility there. I like Dantzler. I think glad he's going to get better. Put another year under those guys' belt. So the cupboard's not as bare as it sure looked after Alvin Kamara ran in for that 6th touchdown. And just to bring it, I wanted to make a point earlier. I was kind of in and out with technical difficulties, but I think we made it work. I'm hoping we did. I wanted to ask Coach if what he thought of Sean Payton. Putting him back in for a 6th. And he had him on the bench, and maybe someone told him, "Hey, you can tie a record that's with 6 touchdowns," and they put him back in.
The crowd was booing on the one that I alluded to earlier. I don't know if you heard that part, but when I think maybe it was Taysom Hill ran it in, or maybe it was Latavius Murray, that would have been the 6th of Kamara's, but before his 6th though, so it would have been the 6th, then he would have had 7.
Correct. And they put him back in, and I know that Peyton and Zimmer have a long time relationship and friendship. I guess they worked together on the Cowboys staff way back in the day, so there's a big rivalry there. And Zimmer's ended the Saints season twice in the playoffs, and one of those games you had Sean Payton doing the fake skull chant. So and you go back a little further, and there's these Bounty Gate too. So he's not my favorite coach in the league, and I'm just wondering, I'm a big proponent of if you don't like it, stop him. Let me say that right out the gate.
Like in regards to like running up the score and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And So I have no problem with him doing it, I guess. But I wish it hadn't been him because I'm not a big fan to begin
I
with.
know it couldn't have been a worse team to have that happen against. I always say whenever I talk about the Saints that, growing up in Minnesota, it's kind of a culture thing to have this rivalry with Wisconsin. You know what I mean? It's just there. It's always been there. The Green Bay Packers or
Geographic.
Wisconsin in general. That's the way it works for everybody. Hatfield and McCoy's and everything. Um, but the Saints earned our hatred, and that's
Yeah.
different. It's not just a foregone conclusion. They actually had to do something for that to happen geographically, like you alluded to. And it also, I literally had to stop watching like NFL Network a couple years ago when they do those like top 10 whatever, like top 10 seasons by running back, top 10 playoff catches. It just felt like half the ones happened against the Vikings for some reason. Like the article I wrote
Oh,
a few months ago about the Hail Marys. It's like we've been involved in a disproportionate amount, both positively and negatively, in Hail Marys. It's
the Vikings have
it's
had
crazy.
more records against them than they certainly made records. You got the 99 yard run by the Cowboys running back. My God, what was his name? Dorsett, 90. Which could never be
Oh,
broken. You
yeah.
have you had a 104-yard kickoff return by a guy from the Chargers, I believe, way
Yep.
back when. I mean,
That was the
the
game
Vikings.
when AP broke the single game rushing record.
That's right. Vikings have been on the wrong side of so many, which just adds to their uh, just adds to how difficult it can be to be a Vikings fan at times.
It's very romanticized though, like the way that they go about it and how they, they're always every 5 to 7 years put together this juggernaut of a team, and then it's just weird heartbreak and 27-yard field goals missed, even though that team wasn't necessarily a juggernaut. 41-0. How Favre got just murdered. It adds to their mystique and their allure in a way. And I've said this on Morning Joe's multiple times. I don't know what I'm going to do if we did win a Super Bowl. I have a very big fear that it's gonna be a letdown emotionally for me. Like, that was it. Now we just have to try again. Like, I'm gonna get into
For me, it's
cross stitching now. Like, I have a weird fear of it.
for me, it's a snow angel out in the backyard, and I'm not. I'm gonna have clothes on, but I'm gonna go do a snow angel and scream
We
until
can
my voice.
pixelate things out. I want a video of you doing a snow angel. That would be the best, even if there's no snow on the ground. And
Well, we're gonna need angels. That's the only way this team's ever gonna get a Super Bowl.
and it sounds like you've had that goal since you were old enough to do snow angels, which is another
Correct.
testament to the Vikings. It's be like, since you were a whippersnapper. Back to Davis though, I just wanted to look up if he was a left guard or a right guard. This doesn't really clear that up. But I thought this was an apropos paragraph on this article from NFLMox.com. At 6'4" and 315 pounds, Davis is an athletic specimen who possesses unmatched length for an interior offensive lineman. This is paired with smooth feet that naturally glide from block to block whilst delivering crushing blocks. Davis operated in a zone blocking scheme at Ohio State, but showed every bit of athleticism necessary to operate as a pulling guard in man blocking schemes as well. Yeah, they got to get him. I would be a big fan of moving Cleveland to the left side because that's his natural side.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to ask Coach about, we've talked about Reef a couple times, and he says that when he graded him for that draft, he didn't grade him as a left tackle, and I always wondered if he means then he graded him more as a right tackle or a guard. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I always almost bring it up and then I get sidetracked. I don't want them to go that route if they don't need to. I think that Reef has a couple years left depending on his contract, and I'm sure he's not happy with the pay cut that he took considering the season that he's having and how all of that was handled in general. But I feel like if they are really, replacing a left guard away from maybe having at least consistent, okay pass protection. You know what I mean? I feel like Cousins has done a lot with limited protection. A lot of people that are detractors of him seem to overlook the fact that these lines have been really bad. 27th pass ranked unit against the pass rush last year. They were worse the season before. They had really bad guard play in 2018. Con Compton and Mike Remmers. I mean, Remmers had never even played the position before, so I don't know why they did that in the first place. Um, and so I do think that he's done a lot again with the limited amount of pocket, just having a pocket in general. Last season, I mean, there were long stretches where you and I would talk about, why didn't they roll out Cousins more? Like we were just, it was so natural for us to talk about him having to run to create a pocket, and that it's just very, it would just be nice to see him be able to do, a couple step drop, stand there, deliver balls down the field to all these talented guys, because there's a lot of potential on this offense, and I think
Yep.
that's really what's going to get them over the hump if they ever do. Because Zimmer's defense is, I mean, with all the respect and all the best against on third down, so on and so forth, they never really flashed the type of elitism that you would see from like the 2000 Ravens or something. Where I feel like they need a great to elite offense on the other side of the ball as well, which is the NFL in general.
Mark Craig in the Star Tribune this morning did a mock draft. He was mocking it, but he did a mock draft, and that's who he had the Vikings taking. Davis
Oof,
from. It'd be nice.
it would
That's
be.
what they need. And then quick, you jump across the line and get somebody in the interior of the defensive line, and then you come back and might have to get another tackle somewhere. And I'm not ready to give up on Garrett Bradbury. That's what some people have already saying he's a bust, and I don't agree with that. But and then you probably better get some cornerbacks and safeties and linebackers. I don't know if they're going to keep Barr. There are so many questions for the squad in the offseason, and I guess after hearing what I heard this morning on KFN Radio and Mike Zimmer's update, I wonder if he's going to answer any of those questions.
Wow.
He was pretty unhappy this morning, but they suffered a tough defeat last week, and like Coach Tice said, it's probably he feels it greater than anybody else since he prides himself with his defense, and they didn't show last week.
And they said the color commentator said that a lot as well. Like he kept bringing up this isn't normal for Zimmer. This isn't something that he's accustomed to. I'm sure he'll bounce back, so on and so forth. Um, but going back to Bradbury, I've been working on a story that's a little multifaceted, but I've been talking to a few former Vikings players and offensive linemen going back a ways. Some from more recently, some from a ways back, and some's on the record, some's off the record, and I'm sure people will dismiss that one way or the other. But I was specifically speaking to a couple about Bradbury, and we did some film breakdown and some of the things that I'll kind of paraphrase, and this is somebody who whose opinion I really respect. I have no reason to think this kid will necessarily be a bust, but he is playing very poorly right now. Bad footwork, no anchor and pass protection, off balance constantly. The most shocking aspect is the lack of awareness. He looks lost on the field a lot. When I say bad footwork, I mean it's too loose. He moves his feet, but he's taking massive steps and reaches on blocks and in play action sets. Particularly against Tampa, there's a lot of things that are bad, really bad. There's a lot of talent on this line, but essentially things feel really disjointed. Like everyone's on an island and they're not really working together. They're all just essentially being handed a piece of paper and being told, "Good luck, figure it out." Is essentially the crux of what I heard from a couple different guys that are obviously have insight as playing on the line in pro football, which I thought was a little astounding because one of the ex players wanted to clarify who the offensive line coach was, and I essentially said Dennison, and obviously they picked up Phil Rauscher from Washington, and he said, well, that's I'm surprised because Washington had good lines with Rauscher there, and I just feel like there's this weird disconnect where these guys just aren't a cohesive unit, and everyone's not playing. again, talent, but they're all kind of playing on their own, and it just seems very strange. And so it was interesting to see, again, that Bradbury is talented and has potential, but it just seems like he's really uh, his technique is bad, and he's um, getting lost on the field, and there's things that they attributed to being more sort of coaching than to maybe Bradbury himself.
Hmm. Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully he can figure it out, because that they wasted, and not they didn't waste. They spent a high draft choice on him, and they spent a decently high one on O'Neal, who's panned out, and they drafted Cleveland, and they have to continue doing it. They got to rebuild that line if they want to do anything in this league. So
That's the way it is. What does Coach Tice say? When you're building a team, build it up the middle, offensive line, linebackers, safeties. And it feels like they have 2/3 of that, so that'll be nice. It's we're getting into a game against the Lions that'll probably be crazy. There's not a lot on the line. There's a lot of people talking about resting starters. I'm a little relieved that Dalvin Cook isn't playing. I'm not for the reasons. I mean, I don't mean that to take away from what he's experiencing from with his family. But I was worried about the amount of carries he's been getting, and maybe I didn't want any injuries to linger into 2021, considering what's on the line next year. But I'm sure I'm down by a non-football score with one game left in our prediction segment. I think I blew it pretty hard last week. I picked the Vikings to win.
no.
What is wrong?
Well, you picked the Vikings to win, but as far as points, you picked up 10 points last week.
What? So what's
Yeah,
it, like
so you had
40 something?
You had 38-27 Vikings winning, and I had 31-24 Saints winning. So neither one of us. I mean, you were closer to the Saints, or I'm not sure how it worked out, but you picked up some points, and therefore. You were down by 46 going into the last week, and so it's not out of the realm of possibilities, but it's close to being another victory for me. Sorry to say.
Well, let's see here. Well, if I'm down by 36, I'm going to pick the Vikings to
46. 46.
Oh,
46.
Dang it. Okay, well then the Vikings are going to win 47-0.
That'll do it for you. If I pick really, really high and really okay, well, I'll go 27-20 Vikings for this one.
All right. Well, my real prediction, I'll say it will be. Oh, this is gonna be hard. I'm gonna pick the Vikings to lose. I'm gonna go 24 to 17. Without Dalvin, we saw how rough that was. Even as much as we like Mike Boone as fans and writers, this offense is so predicated on him that it could be a little rough. But this is a really hard game to predict because there's just a lot of craziness going on. Who's coaching? It's interesting they got rid of Curse even though he was a free agent after the season, just with one game left. I'm sure there was something going on there. He'll never come back here, but he would be a nice player to have on this defense, considering all the roles that he could fill. But yeah, it'll be a fun game. It'll be, hopefully we'll see some of the younger guys. I was gonna say it'd be, a lot of people in response to the article I wrote about resting players were saying, well, what about getting some of these younger guys a chance to show what they can do? And it's like that's been the entire season, hasn't it? I don't think much would change just on the defensive side of the ball if they were resting guys versus not. You know what I mean?
Zimmer's answer to that question this morning was, "Are you going to have any reason to rest any of your starters?" And he just said no, and that was the extent of his answer.
Oh, he's ready for this to be over. It sounds like he's not having. He seems like the type of guy too. This stuff eats away at him. After the Philly game, I think that really kind of, that we came into 2018 with this super complicated defense that these guys just couldn't figure out, and they had to really dial it back. So he gets, I mean, he gets credit for that because he does obviously care very much, and nobody's perfect, I suppose. But we will be back next Wednesday at 7 p.m. I want to thank everybody up in the Detroit Lakes area for all the positive comments we've been getting online. We really, really hope you enjoy the show. We really enjoy doing it. Uh, if you see a larger guy with a kind of an orange beard walking around demanding discounts everywhere on your main street this week, that'll be me. Um, but
I'll look for that.
but yeah, this has been the Vikings Territory Breakdown for the 30th of December. I want to wish everybody out there a happy new year. My resolution is to stop being so positive about the Vikings. I guess somehow I turned into the positive one on this episode, which is not a good. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
I lost the fantasy football playoffs and the Vikings season in the same game in the same day, and my son has playing Montgomery against me. Can you imagine how fun that was?
Oh, that's wow.
I have not recovered. And I followed up the week with the next week with 3 touchdowns from Adams and 3 touchdowns from Diggs for 199 points. So I was a little bitter. Yeah, I was a little unhappy. But yes, that's why you're the positive one and I'm the negative one.
That it makes sense, and I'm sure those potatoes recipe that you gave to Tice gave him food poisoning, so there's probably that. Yeah, thanks again, everyone. We'll catch you next week.